G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend, and happy Easter out there for all that celebrate it. Now, we do have a lot to go over. We're going to talk about the North Group and a possible northern offensive, what would change the landscape of this war, but it may not be that simple. So we're going to talk in length about that. We need to look at potentially NATO involvement in Ukraine and what some other NATO countries are saying, as Italy today has said we don't want to escalate any tensions and we won't be deploying troops. But we know that Macron, he's out there saying there's a lot of potential for this. But right in the beginning of the map, I did miss two updates on the map over the past 48 hours, and I will correct that now. I just missed these. I normally look all up and down the map, and I did just miss these. So if we come across onto the map here, we have Ukraine in the center, the capital of Kyiv, the red areas occupied since 22, and the purple since 2014. Of course, the green areas where Russia has been, has either been pushed out or has withdrawn, and blue is that, but within 2 weeks. Now, we'll come down into the Donetsk Oblast here. Of course, here is Avdiivka. Now, what I missed yesterday was a Russian advancement just out of Pervomayski. So if we just go to yesterday and then we'll turn this on, we'll just see that there is a Russian advancement in Natalyov here as well. Now, while we're in this area, let's talk about any advancements we have seen today. So just out of Pervomayski, we do see this closing up of this pocket that sits between Novelsky and Pervomayski in here. So let's have a look over my specific folder on this. Now, we have that advancement out here shown yesterday, reiterated by Noel Report's map here as well, showing movement in the same area. Then we have two Syriac map updates, this showing this same movement. This map was then released today. That's why I re-looked at the map in this area, as well as then this map here from Syriac showing this movement here, which is in the same direction as this pocket. So this reservoir is here. So the deep state MOD map is actually showing more on this, but you can see movement in the same direction, saying that during the last 5 days, Ukrainian army re-entered in the southern part of Novelsky. So down in here. On the other hand, Russian army begun advancing in the pocket of Pervomayski. So it has been Ukrainian troops re-enter in this area. As we know, this was getting closed off at some point, you can see on this map, but also closing up that. Now, I did miss 24 hours before another update. Now, we come down in here into Kherson Oblast and Krinky, and we can see an expansion of control here. So don't see anything yesterday, day before. I missed this advancement of Ukraine expanding the pocket here. Now, this is still shown as grey zone. I'm not sure why the Ukrainian map isn't putting this as blue. We know Ukraine is present there. We know they're making some ground there. Unsure exactly on why that is, but we come down into here. We have then a Syriac map showing the same movement. This was released today. Situation on Kherson front. During the last 10 days, Ukrainian army widened the bridgehead of Krinky westwards. This is a very, very important area for Ukraine. It's their only place they have a hold on the Kherson left bank. Yes, there's island down here, but it doesn't count as the left bank as far as here. If this was to be taken by Russia back, it would be very difficult to get something there again, especially, up here again, especially if you were to try and have a cross and create some sort of landing. We do have more maps to look at, as well as geolocated footage of strikes and also flags being raised. But we'll talk about that in a second. What I want to talk about is the North Group. Now, we hear more and more about this, but I hear it more from Ukrainian sources, Ukrainian bloggers, and Ukrainian pro-Ukrainian intelligence, such as like the ISW. They're all the ones talking about this, as well as that trailer that was said to be released by Russia, but I could only find it on unofficial Russian pages. But to give you an idea of what this is Ukraine is saying that in Kursk, Belgorod, there is up to 70,000 Russian troops in here for a cross somewhere into Sumy and Kharkiv. Now, we know there must be some real threat of this, as Ukraine is building defensive positions in Sumy and Kharkiv, as well as in regional areas outside of the city centres are evacuating civilians. But what I want to explore is how effective could this be? Is 70,000 enough? What is the overall tactical and strategic benefit of something like this? We have many articles like this that Ukrainian officials saying there's somewhere between 35 and 70,000 troops. Quick operation come in and out, but an operation to take Kharkiv or Sumy is in different order. So, of course, 70,000, not every single one of those is going to be a combat soldier. Now, something I will say is I haven't seen any satellite imagery to show build-up of 70,000 people that you can't just hide in some tree lines, as well as we haven't seen the amount of Ukrainian strikes going back across into Kursk and Belgorod that you would think you'd be having if you knew that tens of thousands of troops were actually building up there. Yes, we are seeing strikes into Belgorod and Kursk, but not on the amount you'd think that you would see. So I put this in my Telegram. You should come and join. North Group, Ukraine says there will be 70,000 Russian soldiers for an offensive soon. Is it a large northern push to capture and surrender Kharkiv or Sumy? So massive push across here like we saw on the 24th of February and try and surround an area, take areas in here. Is it enough troops to take the area? I believe no. Is it enough to bypass some defensive works and maybe set up a bridgehead somewhere that you can then lever out of? Then yes, potentially. A small push to divert Ukrainian assets for an eastern advance and create a buffer zone. We heard Putin talk about this when we saw the Ukrainian crossings from Kharkiv and Sumy back into Russian territory, that Putin said we need a buffer zone on the border. Now, what this would do, cross over the border, even 5 meters, Ukraine is going to have to divert a heap of assets into these regions, building defensive works in case something larger happens and or to try and push the Russian forces back. We know Ukraine has a massive manpower and weapons shortage currently, and that would divert things away from the east, allowing Russia to continue their advancement west. No plans for a push, but a build-up to force the Ukrainian army to divert assets. This is the same. You don't actually need to cross. As long as that's there, you get the same effect. And these were some of the largest ones. A propaganda piece for more support. We have seen many informational battles go on in this war that is saying they're building up all these troops, therefore we need more. We need to rally more support from men within the country to come and fight too. Is there a possibility of that? Yes, of course there is. But why could this be effective? Well, for Russia, right now, offensive actions, it is the perfect time to do this. We know Western money has been allocated, but we know that the weapons and the shell shortage to make a difference is going to take at least a couple of weeks before it starts backfilling onto the front line. So if Russia is able to move in areas, seize and hold land for a few months, then the offensive actions for Ukraine and the time frame they have before the end of the year really start diminishing. So you may actually take away, by staying on the offensive as Russia, you may void Ukraine's ability to actually launch a 2024 counter-offensive if it was possible at all. Of course, if Russia can continue advancing through the end of the year, that will have huge effects on the informational space heading into democratic elections as well. And if Russia is able to maintain the offensive, take ground, hold it over the winter into early year, that gives Russia months and months to dig in and reinforce more defensive areas, which we have seen have been very successful. So if Russia is to launch a large attack, offensive somewhere, whether what we're seeing in the east or we'll see in the north, maybe this is it, maybe there's more to come. Ukraine is saying that it will be mid-May, early June, so still a week or maybe a month away, but I couldn't see a better time to do that strategically than now. And another bit in this as well is we are hearing more and more about a Ukrainian 2025 counter-offensive. And a lengthened front line exacerbates Ukraine's already thin manpower issues, and where Russia will have the advantage ongoing in this war is just having more bodies to man areas. So in that, we mentioned a 2025 offensive, which I think is more realistic than a 2024 offensive. Ukraine has had big shell shortages. Russia is on the offensive. Those shells, those weapons will still take a while to make a difference, and we know that it is too late in the year to recruit and train for an offensive mid-year, and to the end of the year, maybe cutting short how much you have before then the weather sets in. But Jake Sullivan, advisor, US National Security, then has said this to Financial Times today. Echoed Ukraine's hopes that the country will move forward to recapture the territory that the Russians have taken, talking about a counteroffensive in 2025. Of course, the G7 and allies are developing a military package to Ukraine worth up to $50 billion. This is from profits generated from frozen assets. Now, those assets are still generating money, interest, whatever. No one's really comfortable yet to touch those because it may undermine the security of the dollar, the pound, the euro. So we will see. I think that would be a bad idea long term, well beyond this war, could have effects. He's also said Ukraine will have the capacity to hold the line as it faces a difficult period in the war over the next months. So we will see. But as you can see on the map in a second, things are moving. We speak about manpower issues, and I feel like a broken record always speaking about this, but to my opinion, manpower issues in Ukraine is the biggest problem facing a Ukrainian offensive and defensive actions. Weapons can be fixed, funding can be fixed, training for troops that you have can be fixed to a degree if you've got people to replace them. But if you're out of people that are willing to volunteer, you're relying on conscripts, and to the sake of hundreds or tens to hundreds of thousands of those have left the country and may not return, you're going to face large issues. And I was just thinking about this. I know I've suggested things like this before, but Russia had manpower issues beginning of 23 with very high losses early in the war, and of course large withdrawals and the front line being all over the place with no really good defensive works. What really saved Russia from a lot of backfall and actually had a front offensive in that was Wagner PMC, of course funded through a billionaire oligarch, of course with state money feeding in with a degree of plausible deniability. What it did do is it gave the Russian forces a break to go back, train, refit, sit in defensive areas, and then move on to what we have seen now. And it has seemed since then Russia has had a better ability for defensive works and time of training. And I have thought about, and I do wonder if either a Ukrainian billionaire with some deniable funds that would feed through the West for a deal and then onto this could raise some level of PMC. Money talks. People don't like to talk about this, but money bloody talks. A lot of guys left, foreign fighters left Ukraine because they weren't being paid. But if there was real money on the line, yes, it would then become mercenary, blah, 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 like Wagner. But would there be an option there to increase manpower if something like that was on the table of potentially tens of thousands of men? I don't know. I'll put it to you and see what you think about something like that. Now, I know we looked at the maps at the beginning. Let's have a look at the maps again. So we'll come down Donetsk Oblast here, and we will have a zoom in on then the Avdiivka front. Now, if we turn this on so we can see the movement over the last 24 hours, you can see there has been a lot of movement to the west of Orlivka, out from Badachi as well, closing up this gap, this pocket in here that we've been drawing across for a couple of days between Osheretne and Keramik, as well as this northern push out from this town up here. So this is significant. Now, people saying this isn't significant, with everything, I think this is a good bearing actually for many aspects in your life. If this was the other way, how would you be saying it? So if these were Ukrainian gains, would you be saying this is massive, the front line's collapsing, or would you be saying, nah, this isn't that much, not much is happening? Now, depending on that, it's a good bearing to see what significance it has on this. Like with many aspects in your life, if you think, oh, that's not offensive, well, if I wanted to say it to you, how would it be? So again, for the amount of movement we see on the map, whether Ukrainian or Russian, over the past year and a half, this is significant in a day, closing up important areas in here. And from the Ukrainian bloggers that I watch and other bloggers talking about the risk of this being cut off through here, every day that this widens is becoming less and less likely. So let's have a look up in here, as we do have some geolocated footage, and we had some yesterday. We have our own Avdiivka folder here. Now, what we do have is this video of a Russian flag being raised on a blown out building here. Now, this is then geolocated just on the outskirt here around this ring road. So let's zoom in around then ring road. So just in this location in here. Now, what we did see yesterday about here, this is where that line of Ukrainian troops was retreating out of here and then was struck by the artillery. So we do know that there was a withdrawal out of here, and then that's where that flag has gone up today to confirm the advancement and the close up of this pocket. We have further on this, you can just see this is from the deep state of where this was then geolocated as well. Then NOAA reports, he also confirms the gap close in here from Keramik, Osheretne, as well as up into here where that geolocated footage was. Then we have two map updates from Syriac here. Now, the first one is showing the takeover of the gap and the town up here. Russian army took full control over this locality. And then as well, this one is later on in the day and shows more of these movements. We'll just zoom out. That Russian army made new advances north of Osheretny and northwest of Solovov, so just here. In addition, troops advanced south of this village in the direction of Novoprovsky. Moreover, Russian forces advanced on the western shore of the Derna River towards Umansk, taking control over the first trenches. So, in the way of Umansk over here. So, a lot of advancements in this front on the day, and these are all lining up fairly closely through here. And that these are significant movements since the crossing of Berdachi, since the take of Osheretny. This is ballooning out and opening up the front lines for further actions in here. It will be interesting to see what Ukraine's counter is in here, as a lot of ground is being taken in here. And of course, this starts putting pressure on other areas that this is flanking then around. So it'll be interesting and somewhere to, I guess, watch and see what continues on this front line. Now, one last piece I will say is just out from Solovov. This is then when we saw the Abrams taken out. Now, I don't have the geolocation of it. It's just another tank taken out. That said, that confirms the Abrams are still on the front line, goes against what was being reported that the Abrams have been pulled back, but it does show that the best equipment is being thrown at the front line here to try and stop these movements. Now, then we'll come down into, let's go actually to Bakhmut. We have a couple of updates in here. Now, nothing is being shown on this map. What we do know is it was being confirmed that Russia has making moves right up onto the outskirts of Chasiv Yar here, is still having problems on break-in. But I have a bit of geolocated footage here, which is interesting. So then we do see this bridge has been blown up here. Now, this bridge sits at this geolocation. You will see that there is no bridge here. This was a newly made temporary bridge for crossings, of course, to get down onto this track through here to supply onto the eastern side of Chasiv Yar. So this is the eastern side, so to cross right here. Now, it was said that Russia struck this and took it out. That was off a Ukrainian page, but I think it is likely that maybe as well Ukraine may have taken that out themselves to slow down a Russian advance if this was moving through here. So I haven't seen anything specifically hit it, but both of those are realistic for what may have happened to this, and it would make sense. Now, let's have a look at Syriac's update in Bakhmut. So this is the Ivanovsky road through here. We have Klishkivka down here. Russian army retook all the territory it lost 10 days ago between Ivanovsky and Klishkivka. So see this blue here, this was 10 days ago. Syriac is saying that Russia then has taken this back. We'll see then if the deep state map updates that. We know they are slow on some updates, and one of the slowest areas, well, I'd say the slowest area, is Krasnoyarivka. Now, we have seen some red in here. We haven't seen any of this check-marked red for a week or more in here. We do know there's been multiple geolocated footage of Russian movement here, and this still doesn't meet the amount that we know exists in here and the industrial areas. But we have other maps. NOAA reports Ukrainian map here that we see these two roads are. These are these two roads, so we can line up where the industrial works are up in here. So they are saying across the industrial works up into this area up here. So showing something more like this in here of ground being taken, a lot more than this map shows in here. Purposefully, for some reason, this map is just not wanting to show Russian advancement in here as well. We have geolocated footage in this region. So we see on the industrial zone here, this footage I'll show you in a second. Russian army took full control over the refractory plant in the center of Krasnoyarivka. So if we have a look at where this T intersection is, this is said T intersection that in this industrial area. We have a look on this map, on this footage. We have then a Russian flag being waved by a soldier down in here. So I'm not sure why this map isn't wanting to update it. It is showing some movement, but we know it is significantly more than is actually being shown. Now, Novomaya-Livka, no changes shown on this map here, but we do have then a Syriac map in here. The Russian army continue advancing northwest of Novomaya-Livka and enter the first houses of Paraskovskia. So this will be unconfirmed at this point because both aren't showing it, but seeing these first houses in here, this will be significant because that these all run in like a linear formation of these towns and would have a large effect if there was a leapfrog town in areas such as Vuhledar. As well, we know of the railway support up from Mariupol and the new rail being built in these areas. Now, there's no changes down in Robotny. There's a lot of footage and a lot more coming out that the area down here is basically abandoned and indefensible. But again, just wait and see. We'll wait for further confirmation, geolocated footage. What we do see is up in the northeast. So today, Russia made a lot of ground on the front line, relatively speaking. We see up from Klishkivka that Russia has closed up this gap of this other town in here, being confirmed by the MOD map, also being confirmed by then the Noel reports. Noel reports, I believe, is showing a fair bit less control. See where this road comes out? This is this road here. So he's showing a fair bit less than the MOD map is then showing. Then we have the Syriac situation on northeastern front. Russian army took full control over the locality of Koldyivka. It's the same area. Again, hard to line up, but showing fairly similar, and they close up down. So actually the MOD is showing, see where this road bends, that it connects. So it should maybe connect through there. If the MOD map is showing a Russian gain there, then we can say that it's most likely that is what has occurred. But as far as the maps, that is up to speed, I believe, on all the maps. I may miss some bits and pieces, but I do my best to get there. Now, we hear a lot about Western troops going into Ukraine. We hear about these manpower issues. I actually think the manpower issues are not spoken about enough. Everyone focuses on weapons and funding and this and that, and I'm not saying that isn't important. But if you don't have men behind the weapons, you don't have men to train. You could give all the weapons in the world. I think that's going to be I think the further this goes on, the more that's going to become an issue if it's not fixed some way. And I rack my brain trying to think of ways that that could be fixed. But the head of Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who's in the US, gave an interview to BBC World, speaking about NATO and Putin. But when asked what extent Russia posed a threat to Poland, that he did not think President Vladimir Putin would be reckless enough to attack a NATO member state. We've spoken about this before, that we hear more and more from Biden, Macron, Zelensky, everyone over the past 6-12 months that Putin won't stop here. He'll keep moving through. And I don't believe that's really backed up by much. That's not me saying, therefore, let's not support Ukraine. What I'm saying is I just don't see any concrete evidence to that claim militarily as well. Like, if Russia, let's take nuclear weapons aside, they don't have any tactical relevance in a frontline war. They have strategic, diplomatic, and ending the world, but they're struggling in here. They're struggling in Avdiivka and Badachi, and you've got bloody how many kilometers? At least 1,000 Ks to go before you even get to the borders of NATO, and then you've got big problems. I just don't think that argument holds up. I think there's better arguments to be had than the fear-mongering of, if we don't stop it here, they're going to be rolling down your street in Prague. Whatever. Referring to the words of French President Emmanuel Macron, that he does not rule out anything when it comes to the presence of Western troops in Ukraine. Said it is right to put Putin in a situation which he is not sure what the West will do. And we don't know what Putin's going to do next, and Putin doesn't know what the West is going to do next, and that is, done on purpose. That said, Western troops in Ukraine, I don't know. I don't know if it will happen. It will help alleviate manpower issues, even in rear echelon positions, just to then be able to send men to the front line. Maybe that's what France is looking at. I think at this point in time, it's more of a political thing for Macron. If the US, the UK isn't willing to back troops as well, and Germany overarching of NATO, I just can't really see that happening. But let me know what you think. Potentially, but it would lead to a new chapter in the war. If NATO troops were in Ukraine, more so than, they are in elements of advising at the moment, but if they were there as troops, well, that changes the war dramatically. And we'll see. Maybe for a good thing, maybe for a bad thing, but either way, we will report. Legends, this video was very difficult to get through. I just couldn't speak today, but look after yourselves and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.